By June of 632 AD, Muhammad had spent 20 years uniting the warring tribes of the Arabian Peninsula into a single empire. But at 63 years old, he was now dying of a sudden, debilitating fever. This map shows the scale of that achievement. In just 2 decades, the Islamic community had expanded aggressively from Mecca and Medina to control the entire peninsula, creating a new political and religious power center. Yet for all this success, Muhammad was dying abtar, an Arabic term meaning literally curtailed or severed. He had no surviving sons, and in a society where power was often linked to male lineage, he had no natural heir to step into his place. The physical decline was rapid. He suffered from blinding headaches and slipped in and out of a sweat-soaked semi-consciousness. In the stifling heat, his wives could do little more than wrap his head in cloth soaked in cold water to break the fever. Because Muhammad had neither a designated successor nor a written will, his illness posed an immediate threat to the empire's survival. The community had plenty of resources and land, but no clear instructions on who should lead them once he was gone. The center of the Islamic world had narrowed down to the chamber of Aisha, the Prophet's favorite wife. It was a simple one-room hut built of mud brick and reed, but now it held the fate of the entire movement. The atmosphere inside was suffocating. The room was crowded with competing factions of in-laws, aides, and military commanders, all vying for a final word or a moment of proximity to the dying leader. Among those at the bedside was Ali. As Muhammad's first cousin, adopted son, and son-in-law, he was the Prophet's nearest male relative and a primary candidate for leadership. But Ali's presence was a source of friction for Aisha. Years earlier, when Aisha was caught in a scandal involving a lost necklace, Ali had suggested Muhammad simply divorce her, telling him that women are easily replaced. Aisha had carried that grudge ever since. Also present were Abu Bakr and Omar, 2 of Muhammad's oldest companions and most powerful fathers-in-law. Their loyalty to the Prophet was absolute, but their political interests didn't necessarily align with the family's bloodline. The future of the empire now rested with the handful of people inside that sweltering room, where decades of personal resentments would determine who would lead the community. In a final moment of lucidity, Muhammad asked those in the room for a pen and paper. He intended to record a statement that he said would prevent the community from going astray after his death. Instead of a quiet handoff, the request triggered an argument. Omar insisted that the Prophet was delirious with fever and that the Quran provided all the guidance they needed. The shouting grew so intense that Muhammad finally ordered everyone to leave. The request for the pen and paper was never fulfilled. Muhammad died shortly after, leaving behind an unresolved question of succession. This lack of a written record meant that his final wishes remained a matter of interpretation rather than fact. 2 conflicting views immediately emerged. Ali's supporters believed leadership belonged to the Prophet's bloodline, while others, like Abu Bakr and Omar, believed it should be decided by a consensus among the Prophet's closest companions. The failure to produce that one document transformed a personal tragedy into a permanent constitutional crisis, splitting the foundations of Islamic governance. While the city waited, Ali and the Prophet's blood relatives stayed inside the sickroom, performing the sacred task of washing the Prophet's body for burial. Miles away, the native Medinan helpers had convened a secret shura, a traditional tribal council. They were meeting to elect their own leader, hoping to reclaim control of their city before the Meccan elites could take over. When Abu Bakr and Omar heard about the meeting, they rushed to the site and gate-crashed the proceedings. They insisted that only someone from the Prophet's own tribe, the Quraysh, had the authority to keep the Arabian tribes united. The shura lasted 24 hours, escalating from ornate speeches to shouting and fistfights. As the meeting reached a breaking point, Omar forcefully pledged his allegiance to Abu Bakr, prompting the exhausted delegates to follow his lead. Ali remained in the silent sickroom with the Prophet's body, while Abu Bakr and Omar emerged from the backroom having already secured the state. By the time Ali emerged from mourning, the political world had moved on. He found that Abu Bakr had already been installed as the first caliph, forcing Ali into a period of defiant refusal to pledge his allegiance to the new regime. The burial itself was conducted with the same swiftness. Muhammad was buried exactly where he died, directly under the floorboards of Aisha's chamber. It was a physical and political finality that locked the new leadership in place. the political victors saw immediate rewards. Abu Bakr assumed total control of the empire, while his daughter Aisha was granted valuable property and became the most influential woman in the community. These events gave birth to two distinct sects. The Shia, the party of Ali, stayed loyal to the family's bloodline, while the Sunni followed the consensus reached by the community's companions. This map shows how that internal divide eventually defined the geography of the entire Middle East. Iraq, located at the center of the conflict, became the borderland where these two sides met, eventually serving as the cradle of Shia Islam. Today, that 7th century crisis still dictates regional stakes. Funded by modern oil wealth, a fundamentalist Wahhabi movement emerged from Arabia to challenge Shia influence, showing how the tension in those two small rooms created the political landscape we see today.